U.S. Farm Report from the 2021 March Classic is brought to you by Grain Farmers of Ontario, building innovative, sustainable grain farms across Ontario, Canada.
Well, a big thank you to the Grain Farmers of Ontario for having us at their March Classic this week. So we're adding some Canadian flavor to our roundtables. Philip Shaw joining us this weekend, as well as Dan Hueber and Darren Newsome. Darren, I'll start with you. When you look at these markets, I know it was a fairly quiet week, but what do you feel like the markets were telling us this week ahead of next week's big USDA reports?
Phrasing the question that way, it makes us go out and look at the new crop spreads. And what we've seen is the March corn spread leaking a little oil in here, working a little bit lower, testing some support, while the new crop November-January soybean spread staying pretty strong. So, overall, what this is telling us is the commercial side may be getting a little bit more comfortable as we head towards planting season. Possibly the idea that we could see, maybe more corn acres than expected, because early on, we were thinking that soybeans might be trying to buy some acres away. But the spreads are certainly indicating corn maybe holding on to most of its acres, possibly increasing again. Soybeans aren't likely to get all they're going to need to rebuild supplies.
Dan, when we go in next week and this planting intentions report, we can always see surprises, but we're expecting a record number of acres this year. So what surprise could we see from USDA next week, possibly?
Well, of course, one of them would be if we don't see the increase in beans as we would hope to. Again, they gave us 90 million acres on their baseline projections here a month ago. But, realistically, we need to see higher acreage than that. Has the cotton market rallied enough to keep us from pulling acres away from cotton? So it's, I really think it's, the market is kind of geared up to see big numbers in both. Again, that 92 million on corn, I think, hopefully will be the lower end of it, but I think people are tending to want to favor corn as far as planting the spring. So, probably the biggest question and particularly when you look at how dire or how tight the ending stocks projections are in the soybean market, we're going to need to see higher acreage than 88 million in beans to feel at all comfortable as we move into the summer months.
Yeah, Philip, we know that's an intense battle right now for acres here in the U.S. It is the same in Canada. So what is the sentiment right now in Canada as far as acres go, when we know that battle is happening north of the border as well?
Yeah, I deal mostly with Eastern Canada. Certainly in Western Canada, canola is certainly a favorite now, but they all are. But canola is really hot. But keep in mind in Ontario, you're our competitor too, and we do import a lot of American corn from time to time, but our acres are more finite than your acres. Most Ontario farmers, most Canadian farmers are fixated on how many acres our American friends will grow this year, because you get in the more northern and eastern areas of Ontario and Quebec, and you only go a couple hours north of that, or even an hour north of that, and you really can't grow grain corn effectively because it's just too cold. And so, I'm expecting, and our numbers are much lower than yours, of course, I'm expecting about 2.1 million acres of corn and 3 million acres of soybeans. And those numbers really don't, they juggle around, but they really don't change as much on the price gyrations of the market, simply because we have a finite number of acres that you can have in cultivation here in Ontario and in Quebec.
Darren, there were some early private estimates that came out, and some just this week, some that possibly suggested we could see less than 89 million acres of soybean acres this year. If that's the case, we already have tight balance sheet. What would that do to the dynamics?
Well, that's gonna keep our market fundamentally bullish, through the next marketing year as well. And certainly, again, seems to be what the market's telling us, that regardless of what's out there right now, it's bullish out through the 2021-22 marketing year. But that's certainly going to increase the fire underneath this already hot market. So we have to remember, these are just a prospective number. This isn't the end number. This isn't the end all and be all. This is just one of the opening salvos and a guess. The market will probably pay attention to it for about 5-10 seconds, and then it's going to go on, turn its attention back to weather and the reality of what's actually going to get planted.
Yeah, and it's not just acres that we're going to get a look at next week. We're also possibly going to get an updated look at demand. And so we'll talk about that with our analysts later on U.S. Farm Report.